We got 2 more days of camp before we break camp. Today was as good as it's been, especially defensively from from an effort standpoint, from an energy standpoint. They're starting to get it a little bit. They're starting to fly around, make some plays. We haven't narrowed anything down from a depth chart standpoint, so we will continue to evaluate all of our guys. We haven't broke up into scout teams or any of that, so we'll continue to evaluate our guys for the next 2 days prior to breaking camp and getting into a routine of school, which the next time I visit with you guys will be in a routine of getting ready for the Marshall game and all that. But here for today and for the next 2 days, it's about stay the course, keep evaluating everybody in our program, and get to the point to where we kind of know where we're at on Monday. So with that, we'll take some questions.
How much evaluation is left? I mean, how comfortable are you? How good of a handle do you think you have on where guys fit?
Various guys we feel good about, other than others, obviously, but there's still some positions. Take, for instance, the D-line that we're still repping approximately 15 guys at D-line, which is just, you can't do that. I mean, obviously, when you got to narrow it down to the guys that you're going to feel good about playing, and the more you practice, the more you can see guys separate themselves. So in certain areas, we can see it separating itself from starters to backups. For instance, at receiver, we feel like Stedman's an obvious starter. Jordan Thompson's an obvious starter. Tavon Austin's an obvious starter. J.D. Woods is an obvious starter. And then you have, backups. And we will assess all the backups to where we figure out how much they can handle playing. But the D-line, we're not sure where that's at yet. So still, some areas feel good about, some areas we don't.
Gang, obviously, Gino wasn't. I think can you update on Gino?
Yeah, his grandmother passed away, so he took a few days to go back home to spend time with his family, and we'll be back by school. So it gives us an opportunity to rep Paul and Ford a lot. So they got just a whole bunch of reps, and we'll continue to do that for the next 2 days.
Then you, in a way, I'm not saying Gino's grandmother's death, but the fact that you had to play today, practice, and probably for the next few days without Gino, does it help in some ways? At least your inexperienced backup quarterback.
Yeah, they've been getting a lot of reps anyway. Gino probably takes 50% of the reps, maybe slightly higher than that, and then we split the other 40% approximately between the two. And Ford's a guy that he's talented, but he's where Paul was a year ago, just from a knowledge standpoint and a rep standpoint. So yeah, to answer your question, it goes from giving them 20 to 25% of the reps to 50% of the reps, which means that they'll get better. With they look like young, inexperienced backup quarterbacks out there, and the more they rep, the better they're going to be at it. So heaven forbid ever being in that situation to have to put them in to be with the first string, because Gino clearly makes everybody else around it better. Watching both Ford and Paul, who will rep with the first team, they don't necessarily make everybody else around it better. Where it's clear that number 12 does. We're better with him, obviously. So we'll keep repping.
With all due respect to you, do you enjoy creating 2 hours of panic among your fan base by being rather coy about?
Damn that social media, right? Yeah, I didn't invent it. I mean, usually everybody would know what happened during practice here once practice is over, but social media, and we could always take y'all's phones when y'all come in there and not allow you to do that. I don't think anybody'd be fired up about that.
How's Paul look? You mentioned that Ford's looking like Paul did at this time last year. I mean, have you seen big strides out of him? Have you seen marked improvement?
In certain areas, yes. In certain areas, no. I don't know what else you want to say.
What certain areas? What has he gotten better at?
I mean, some plays it looks good, some plays look bad. So he has a long ways to go, as Ford has a long ways to go, as virtually every single freshman quarterback across the country has a long ways to go. We're forced to play Paul as a true freshman, which that doesn't happen very often at quarterback. So usually he'd be in a situation where he's entering his redshirt freshman year. They're both young. They both look like freshmen, young, inexperienced backup quarterbacks.
When do you anticipate getting the depth chart kind of close to being ready for the first game?
We'll work towards it to get it settled Tuesday. Sunday will be a lifting and running day. Monday will be a day off because it's the first day of school. So we'll regroup and get it relatively in order for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We'll practice a couple of game weeks next week prior to heading into the real game week. We don't want to go into the real game week with having to wrap 3 people at each position. You can't do it. So don't mind repping 3 at each position next week, but then the next week we got to narrow it down to those who we're going to play.
Dana, is the music before practice, is that from your personal iPod?
Is that from my personal iPod? I don't have an iPod. You don't like the music?
Yeah, well, I'm a little older, so.
Yeah. We're not playing with a bunch of older guys. We let them pick the music, just like we let them pick the uniform combinations and all that. I mean, it's a little bit more about them than it is you, with all due respect.
I appreciate that. I have a serious question. With the freshmen that come in, obviously there's going to be a lot of those in the 2 deep. Are you surprised by how quickly they've adapted? Is it mostly necessity, or is it because their play dictates or warrants that they should be where they're at?
I didn't say any of them were in the 2 deep, and I didn't say that their play was warranted them being in the 2 deep if they were in the 2 deep. I never said that. We're still evaluating them. If they're good enough to beat some older guys out, then we're happy about that. If we're putting them in positions to be second teamers, potential starters based on no competition, based on injuries or lack of depth at that position, then we're not fired up about it. So we'll sort that out here in the next few weeks.
Dana, with that being said, you said 15 guys still repping on the D-line. Break down where that currently stands. Is that a lack of competition? Is that where are you at there?
Man, it's just a lot of, there's so many young guys. I mean, you're talking about 5 new freshmen. We didn't have a whole lot of depth at that position anyway. I mean, if you look at how many returning guys with experience, I mean, you're looking at Shaq with very minimal experience last year, George Wright, obviously returning starter, Will Clark, returning starter, Loggeman, very few snaps last year. Other than that, none of those guys played. So it's a bunch of guys that haven't played. So you mix the freshmen in with a bunch of guys that haven't played, and you just try to figure out the next group of guys. I mean, obviously George is going to play and Shaq's going to play, or not Shaq, but Will. Those 2 guys are going to play a lot. And then you rep guys that have some experience, but then you mix all the young guys in and you figure out what they can do good and what they can't do good. You try to mix and match and piece together. We don't have any we don't have any Bruce Irvins at this point. So we're just trying to locate guys that can rush the passer. We're trying to locate bigger guys that can stop the run like Julian did for us and all that.
And with that being said, then when it's all shaken down, how many do you need in rotation to have?
Probably about 12. I would think we'd carry 12. If we're playing 12, then that means if we're playing 12, that means that nobody's established themselves. That's still too many to play. We're just not. We don't have to at this point narrow it down. We don't have to. We're going to have to start narrowing it down next week. I would guess probably 8 to 9 need to play a bunch.
Sorry, is the same true, maybe not the number, but at least some uncertainty in the new guys or receiver for you?
To a lesser degree, because I'd be comfortable naming those 4 guys I mentioned earlier as the starters right now. So, the receivers, the backup receivers aren't going to play as much as the backup D-line. That's just a harder position. It's a much harder position. One, there's always 4 D linemen on the field, and I'm counting that buck position as a D-line position, which, we're a 3-4, but that buck's a bigger body that plays a lot of D-line spots for us. So it's much more taxing for them. And then with that said, it's from a receiver standpoint, we're playing 2 receivers at times, and then 3 receivers at times, and then 4 receivers at times.
Do you have 8, 10 yet, 12 yet? or
Receivers?
5?
Receivers? No. Got 4, and then, yeah, KJ Myers is doing a good job. He's really doing a good job. Other than that, you can group the other 8 guys together, and we're going to keep evaluating them here to figure out who the next guys need to be.
Coach Gillespie said yesterday that Sean had kind of nudged ahead of Garrison and Andrew. What have you seen out of Sean in camp so far that's kind of pushed him ahead?
Leadership, very physical, tough. He's in shape. He's healthy. So he's really playing well. He doesn't necessarily have the best parts in the world, so we need to protect his old man parts.
And I want to ask you about Mike Leach a little bit. You guys spent a lot of time together at Texas Tech. You got the job. You said you're one of the best offensive coaches he worked with. Could you just talk just about your guys' relationship? I mean, where it is now, but the time you spent together and maybe how that's affected you as a coach to the year?
Well, I read his book in 30 minutes, so I knew everything that he was going to be in that book. So we go way back, and from an organizational standpoint, the 8 years that I was with him, that's what I took from him more than anything, is how you organize your offense, how you practice it, how you keep repping specific things. I mean, he's a mastermind when it comes to organization. So I learned a lot of that stuff organizationally, and then obviously when I broke off, because I had to break off at some point, then when I broke off, I put my own spin on it. But we go way back, and we're close friends and keep in touch. And it's good that he's back in the game. It's good for college football that he's in the game.
What's he going to do up there? You think he's going to do in the Pac-12?
It's a lot like Lubbock. It's isolated, and it's a little bit of a challenge to recruit, which Lubbock was a little bit of a challenge to recruit as well. Competition's hard, but he's used to winning a whole lot of games in that situation. It's pretty much the same situation as Texas Tech.
Would you be surprised to see him use one of your spins or tweaks?
Well, you'd have to ask him.
Would it surprise you? I mean,
we trade notes all the time. But he was here week 10 or 11 or something when he was on a radio show, Tony, and he sat out there and he looked at my scripts and my papers, and half of it made sense to him, half of it didn't. He stuck it in his pocket. So I don't know if he likes any of it or not.
Can you talk about that defensive energy? You mentioned it in that introduction there. What were they doing well, and how good is that to see at this point in camp where maybe guys otherwise might be winding down?
Well, yeah, they're having fun. I mean, they're having fun. Offensively, we got a lot of the guys back, and it's not about who wins the drill. I mean, we're trying everything to try to make them better, and they're trying different things and trying to improve their stuff to make us better. It's called a competition, and obviously amongst the offense and defense, it's competitive. But what you look for is guys trading blows, and then after the drill, everybody's coming together and excited about being out there. But I've been at some practices where it's quiet, and everybody acts like they don't want to be out there. And it just seems to me like these guys like to be out there and they like to play and like to practice. Makes it enjoyable to coach them, and then it makes it enjoyable to get a whole bunch of stuff on tape to where you can come in and watch it.
When you assess kind of the issues you had maybe last year at this point compared to now, when it sounds like the only real problems you have are numbers and trying to figure out who's going where. I mean, what's the difference to you when you look at that?
Assess what? I'm not sure what you mean.
When you assess, the needs of the team at this point last year as compared to now, I mean, how?
I don't remember what our needs of the team were last year, to be honest with you. I tried to bury 2011 when 2012 opened up. So we're going to worry about 2012. 2011 was fun, but it's over, and it's nothing that happened in 2011 can help us in 2012. So we meet daily, we watch film daily, and we try to assess what our needs and what our issues are on all 3 sides of the ball, and try to make it a little bit better.
do you think part of the excitement of your entire team that you were talking about is because so many of the freshmen are still involved, still competing for playing time? It helps that some guys know they've still got a chance.
Probably. The number one motivational factor for anybody ever is competition. It's either yours or somebody's going to take it from you. They get a little nervous. So the more competition we can that can exist amongst the specific positions, the the more you're going to get out of them. The more effort you're going to get out of them, and the more, the more focus and the more want to, I guess.
Is this as many freshmen as that you have had in your coaching career?
No.
Still competing at this point?
No. At 2 years at Houston, we probably played about 15 true freshmen. I know that 1 year at Oklahoma State, we had about 16. It's much more common in the Southwest from the Big 12 and Conference USA because of the style of ball than what's existed in the Big East.
What have you seen out of J.D. Woods that has him right up there with the starters at this point?
Making plays. Just making plays. I mean, we target him and it works out. He's getting open, he's playing fast, and he's doing a good job. He's 100% different than he was a year ago. If he's any different than that tomorrow, then we'll put somebody in front of him.
Coach, in terms of redshirting, are you all have an idea right now who you want to redshirt, and when do you plan on making that final decision?
Yeah, we'll talk about it this weekend. We got 2 more days. We got tomorrow and Saturday where we'll keep evaluating. We'll meet as a staff Sunday and Monday and start talking about it. We haven't met to start talking about that. We'll start doing that Sunday, Monday. It doesn't mean we'll make decisions. We may make decisions on 10 guys, but it may take another week of work to make a decision on some of the other guys. Everybody good? Okay, thanks, guys.